We're here with V, Coach V, Queen V. Um, so you've been working with me for 6 years, but prior to that, you were in the church for most of your life, right? Um, Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, how long were you in church for? Did you start out as like a young girl doing that, or how did that all fall into place?
Yeah. So I really started going to church when I was like 15. Um, you know, I remember from the time I was a little girl, though, my grandma was like, I feel like almost everybody has a grandma or knew a grandma at some point that was like a praying grandma. She was always in church. That was my grandma.
Everybody needs those grandmas.
Everybody needs those grandmas. My grandma is one of my heroes, honestly.
Mm.
She she was like the sweetest, most patient woman. And I grew up, staying overnight at grandma and grandpa's house. And the deal was like we got to like kind of run around grandma and grandpa's neighborhood, run amok, do whatever we wanted to. But we had to go fishing with grandpa and we had to go to church with grandma.
Mm.
And, I grew up going to church with grandma and I didn't really, have much to do with it until I was 15 and I really had an experience when I was 15 where I really saw some people in my life that had a real relationship with God and
Mm.
I realized I wanted that too.
Mm. Mm.
And so from that time on I actually started going to the same church that my grandma went to and I loved it there.
Mm.
I loved the pastor and his family. He
Mm.
had four daughters and I had five sisters. So it was kind of like, you know, um, it was just a lot of like good family kind of energy
Mm.
there. And that was the church that I grew up in and I had been in church ever since. After that I got married at a super young age. I was 17 when I got married and we went into ministry. We went to Bible college and then became pastors, first youth pastors and then senior pastors later on. And so
Mm.
Ben was in the church from the time I was 15.
All right.
Um,
So let's back up though a little bit because I know a little bit about you and how you grew up. So I was there something that led you to church? Talk to me a little bit about how you grew up because I know obviously I've known you for a little while now, right? Um, your dad, his background,
mhm.
where he worked, what he did, how that whole relationship, that dynamic was. Talk a little bit about that because I think a lot of people don't know
Yeah.
how you grew up.
Yeah. So, I grew up in a family that, we didn't have hardly any money. And a lot of the reason why we didn't have a lot of money is because my dad really struggled with substance abuse. When I was younger, he drank a lot, and my dad was one of those people that when he would drink, he got mean and
Mm.
usually would end up in a bar fight. And it was actually a good thing if he ended up in a bar fight because if he didn't end up in a bar fight, he was going to come home and get violent with usually my mom. Um, so that was kind of like when I was real young, and then he sort of stopped those ways because he saw what it was going on, like in his marriage, and he switched vices to marijuana, to pot.
Mm.
And that was really like how I grew up. Like I grew up with a dad who like smoked weed every day, all day, basically.
Mm.
And he never really worked. And that was one of the reasons why we didn't have very much money. And so there was like this tension that was always in the house, like making sure like dad was like good because if dad didn't have weed, like he was really cranky or like there's just if you've ever grown up or been around people who have substance abuse issues, like you kind of have to tiptoe around them to make them happy. Otherwise, all hell breaks loose.
Mm.
And so that was kind of how I grew up. And then when my when I was like 11 or 12, I remember my mom went to go work at a factory because like we needed money. Like we couldn't survive off of dad's odd jobs and welfare and food stamps and all that kind of stuff anymore. And so that was like a big turning point for me as a kid because I was, getting a little bit older. And I really kind of stepped in and started taking care of like my younger sisters that were still home and everything. And so it was just this like, I think I was always like, mature for my age. And a
Mm,
lot of it had to do with that. And so when you're a kid and you're like mature for your age, you kind of like end up a little frustrated and sort of searching for something.
hmm.
And I think, you know, thankfully, I ended up finding something positive.
Finding Jesus? No.
Yeah, I found Jesus.
Yeah.
Because like it could have gone a whole different way, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I really was searching for something to help me feel, um, I don't know, just better, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I think you were telling me a story about how you were asking your mom, mom, um, like when it got bad,
Hmm.
how your dad was. And I remember one story you telling me, like your mom told you, hey, if it gets bad, like call 911 or call
Oh,
the cops or something like that. What happened?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that is the story of like that's like one of my most traumatic stories, honestly, because it's the night that my mom and dad like basically split up. So that was I can't remember exactly what my mom and dad were arguing about. Um, like, and just to kind of put it in perspective, like my mom was amazing. Like my mom wasn't a problem. If they were arguing, like something was going on with my dad, but um he got upset about something, and he he left the house in a in a like blow up. Like he left the house angry. I think he threw the phone out the window, broke the window, and so we knew like eventually he was coming back, and he was probably going to come back even more pissed than when he left. And so like we were all kind of waiting for him to come back. And I remember my mom telling me, she's like, Virginia, if it gets bad, you have my permission to call the police. And she had never said that before because this sort of thing had happened on some level or another growing up. And at this point in time, I was 17. And so I was the oldest kid in the house at the time. And um, so I'm kind of just like waiting for my dad to show up. And sure enough, he shows up, and like it gets bad. He's being violent, pushing my mom around and everything. And so I decided to call the police because it was getting somewhere. And um, so I called the police, and then they came out, and it turned into like even bigger because my dad was drunk when he came home. And then you know he ended up getting arrested. He ended up grabbing his gun too. So like it ended up to be like this whole big deal. He got arrested for um, being intoxicated with a firearm. And I think that was the only thing because my mom didn't press charges on him for anything else. And
Hmm.
that was um, then after that we all left the house and we went to go stay with my sister. And that was the last night we were all together as
Hmm.
a family. So
Do you think that you developed like resentment towards your dad in any way?
I did then for sure. Like, um, I've resented my dad a lot when I was young. Like from like my earliest memories
Hmm.
probably have resentment
Hmm.
towards my dad,
Hmm.
and then all growing up for sure,
Hmm.
and even like into young adulthood, like for sure, like I always had resentment towards
Hmm.
my dad. And then something did shift though when my mom and dad split up
Hmm.
because I did see a different dad at
Hmm.
that point.
Hmm.
I saw somebody who he was genuinely sorry, but it was too late. And that's the thing that I think I've seen from like when I've now as an adult, in my 40s, and I see different relationships and the ones that split up. I see that happen a lot where it's like there there will be signs all along in the relationship
Hmm.
for the in this instance. I'm not saying women are always in the right, like at all, but like in the instances where it's like the dude needs to get his stuff together, where like they know, but they're not doing anything. And then when they, by the time that, they realize it because she left and the
Hmm.
kids are with her, they're really sorry, but there's no going back anymore at that
Hmm.
point.
Hmm.
And I saw that happen in my dad, and so
Hmm.
I had a little bit of a softening towards him
Hmm.
at that time, but still very frustrated with
Hmm.
with how he was. So
So you're saying guys are slow learners. So what would you say? I mean, how do you, why did it take him so long? Like what could have been different?
yeah.
Like why did it take him so long? Because a lot of people are in the same spot, and I know that's
Mhm.
why you have an affinity towards the program that we run.
Yeah.
And the first thing that we always tell everybody is drop vices,
Mhm.
because that was the thing that really held your dad back. And if he didn't have vices, he probably would have been in the gym, pumping iron,
Yep.
doing push ups, doing some sort of physical sport or something like that. But
Mhm.
the drug and the drink got a hold of him first.
That's exactly what it was, cuz even back then you start to see patterns, like I watched my dad, but my dad was like, even though he never really worked a job in his life, like he was in shape. Like my dad had
Hmm.
muscles. He was a good-looking guy. Like he taught me how to do push-ups. Like there's a lot of good things that I
Hmm.
got from my dad.
He's a old school type of like bar fight,
Yes.
construction kind of guy.
Yep.
Like maybe I don't even think he did construction for a living, but one of those kind of
Mhm.
guys, right?
Yep.
Like probably Rocky and like
Yes.
Muhammad Ali and stuff like that.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he liked all that stuff. Like we had Scarface on VHS, and like all the
Wait,
typical.
so the girl in South Dakota, because that's where she's from,
Yeah.
country girl has had Scarface on VHS.
Yes, absolutely.
People don't really realize that though, because they know you as the church girl, and
Mhm.
that's why I want you to tell a little bit of your story,
Yeah.
because smelling weed in your house
Mhm.
and probably alcohol at
Mhm.
some point was normal.
Yeah.
Your dad, where did he work? Tell everybody where he worked, because I'm always just like,
Yeah.
people really don't understand. Yes, you have the church background,
Mhm.
but your background was also like this.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, so he didn't really work, but at different points in my childhood, he'd hold like jobs for like a certain amount of time, and when I was like middle school, early high school, he was a bouncer at a strip club. And not just like, to put it in perspective though, is like we lived in rural South Dakota, and like our house was in the middle of nowhere on like, if you fly over the Midwest and you see like the little section of green with like a little house plunked in the middle of it, that was us right there. We're in the middle of nowhere. The next town was called Lesterville. It was a town of, it still's there. It's about a town of like between 1 and 200 people. And the town that I went to school in was a little further down the road, and that had a whopping like 900 people in it. And the strip bar that he was a bouncer at was in the town of like 1 to 200 people. And so there's no hiding the fact that your dad works at the strip club. Like everybody knows, like, and it is talked about. So yeah, that was how I grew up. Like, and there's a little bit of shame in there because of that. We're like,
What did people say? Like, you
nobody really,
recall?
that's the thing, like nobody really says anything to your face,
Yeah.
but you feel the whispers behind your back. And I
Mm.
do remember when I started dating a guy in high school, he had told me later, his mom was like, don't date her, like her dad works at this strip club. And so it was, like it was kind of like shh, but like, you know
Mm.
known but not really said to your face.
Wow. All right. So let's fast forward a little bit. All right. So now you're coaching, helping change people's lives. Basically, like the way that I know this is your purpose is because you were helping people in the church prior to this, and now since you got out of the church, and you could talk about that if you want, you're still helping people in the same way, even though you started out working at a gym. You're still helping people find God, know God. You're even in our coaching calls, you're teaching about scriptures and pointing people back to life, basically. That's how I know it's part of your purpose. Like your purpose goes with you everywhere you go. So it doesn't matter if you change titles or jobs, that travels with you. Um, so yeah, I mean, talk to me a little bit about what you do now and how you like it, how you feel about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny because like I never really thought that uh, so when I left the church, well, let me back up. I was married for 20 years, and we were pastors. And so when I got a divorce, um 6 years ago, I never thought I would find myself in anything remotely even resembling ministry ever again.
Hmm.
Um, which was hard, actually. There's parts of ministry that I really loved, parts that I didn't love, but parts of it that I did.
Which parts of ministry don't you love?
Um, the politics of it was probably number one. Everything in a lot of churches, and even in some of like the best churches, there's still a thing about appearances, like how things look, how um, the the a lot of things are um, you know covered up, or not, they end up not being authentic or real because like how it might look, especially if you're a pastor's family. So that part I hated. um the the part about, there's a lot of like great things about leading a church, but one of the frustrating things is there's a lot of people who have opinions in the church too, that you usually end up having to take guidance from and listen to. So like the way that most churches are set up is like elders and deacons and board members, you kind of have to report to them on some level. So you, even if you are a great leader, you, as far as like having a vision and wanting to go after something, you better know how to work with people and get them on your side, not just the people that like are in the pews, but the people that you have to meet with every week. And
Hmm.
so there's and a lot of those people have a lot of long held beliefs that are kind of hard to break through sometimes, just depending on what you're trying to do.
Hmm. Yeah. So, um, yeah, I want to make sure that we get out some of your best like advice and best topics. Like you help a lot of what kind of what kind of people you, most of the people that you coach are women.
Yeah.
Um, because I love to talk about your past, but I want to make sure that people get the nuggets, like the real teaching that you have to offer. Obviously, that would only be possible because of all the stuff that you've gone through, and
Mm-hmm.
all the wisdom comes from experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it teaches. So it's like, um, what kind of person do you help now? And like, what are some of the things that you help people with today?
Yeah. Um, Man, that's kind of a hard question to answer in a way, but I think,
I could tell you one, but I'll let you go
okay, well,
first.
I'll
Yeah,
answer
yeah,
and then I'm kind of
yeah,
curious what you have to say, to be honest. But
yeah.
I end up helping a lot of people. Um, One thing that I've really had to learn how to do myself is um, control my emotions. And I think for a lot of people in general, but especially women, like learning how to like I want to say master your emotions, but for some reason that kind of irritates me. So I'll just say
Hmm.
control your own emotions,
Hmm.
um, is so valuable because we have a lot of them. Like people and like people and like I don't think emotions are a female only thing, but I do think that we are more sensitive, so that means like we feel them first and faster, and we feel them more intensely than men. And so because of that, like they oftentimes can get in the way from our vision, our purpose, and really what we want for our life, and they make it difficult to communicate. And so if you can learn how to harness them, and I don't mean stifle them, I don't mean shut them down, I don't mean numb them, because that happens a lot. I mean learn how to control them and then use them to help you
Mm-hmm.
communicate, to help you influence people. And so that's what I find myself having a lot of conversations on, and it kind of almost a lot of the conversations can usually tie back to emotions on some level, because I really think that emotions are part of our soul.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things that we talk about on the program when it comes to personal development, they have something to do with your soul, because your soul is made up of your mind, your emotions, and your will.
Mm-hmm.
And and so mastering your soul is going to help you connect all the dots together.
Mm-hmm.
So and then along with that, I would say um, I was telling people on my story the other day, like relationships are a huge pain point for a lot of women.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're a pain point for a lot of people in general, men included. But usually that's number one on the priority list for
Mm-hmm.
women. Like
Mm-hmm.
relationships, either wanting a relationship, wanting a better relationship with your current partner, like why is this not what I thought it would be? Or yeah, usually one of those two things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I like when you say is if you try to block an emotion, whatever emotion that is, let's say jealousy or resentment or whatever it may be, you're actually blocking the other emotions. And I learned that from you. What? How, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, so we talk about vices a lot, right? But like the reason why people use vices is because they want to numb something. You want to not feel something, you want to escape something. And and sometimes, and this was me, I didn't have any like quote unquote vices necessarily.
Not the main ones
Not the
like
main,
that most
yeah.
people have.
Right. I didn't really have any of those, but I did learn how to cover it up with some things, like maybe it was busyness,
Mm-hmm.
like taking care of other
Mm-hmm.
people, distracting my mind, using using relationships to get my mind off of what I was feeling, or just plain old stuffing them down and not feeling anything. And the thing about when you numb emotions, whether it's with a vice or your own like ability to suppress them, is you cannot selectively numb anything. And I had that realization through um, when I was in labor with my second kid, and I'm in the hospital, and I thought I was like a champ. I was like, I'm gonna have this baby naturally, and I'm not gonna have an epidural, and I'm gonna like, just I'm gonna do this. And it hurt way more than I thought it was going to. And so by the time like we're like, all set up, I was like, you know what? I think I will have something, I'll take something. And they were like, okay, but you know what? It's actually too late for you to have an epidural, but we can give you something to quote unquote take the edge off. And so at this point, I'm like, all right, like I'll take whatever you got. And they gave me a medication that's called Nubane, and all it did, I felt all the pain still, but my mind was just like kind of dead. Like it just kind of turned me into a little bit of a zombie. And I'm sure it calmed the staff down, because then I wasn't like asking for anything and I wasn't anxious or anything like that. But the thing that I hated about it was that when I held my baby in my arms for the first time, I didn't feel much
You're like,
in the
what's up?
moment. I was like, cool. And I was aware of this feeling, and I was like, this is weird. Like I don't like this. So, and don't worry, like we bonded eventually. Like
Which one of your kids was that?
but but that's the thing about numbing, you can't selectively numb it. And so if you numb, frustration or anger or desire or shame, and you just suppress it, you're also numbing the higher emotions, joy, peace. You numb ability to feel in general. You
Mm-hmm.
can't feel anything
Mm-hmm.
then, and you want to be able to feel things. And
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people that are just missing feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's why people go um it's why people go out and
Did
drink.
it stop? Do we need to stop?
Okay.
Okay.
All right. One of the reasons why people go out and drink is so that they can feel again.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why people go have affairs is so they can feel again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like sometimes you use devices to escape a
Mm-hmm.
feeling, but you also get a feeling finally from it. You get to feel something again.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Good. All right. So, real quick, one of the other things that you talk a lot about, in my opinion, is having your own voice, especially for women, because you just eventually kind of hide behind your kid,
yep.
or uh, subdue a lot of emotions. You end up not having your own voice, your own identity. Um, what is one what is like a good way to start getting, or I don't even know if women realize that. They
Yeah.
don't even realize that they're in that state.
Mm-hmm.
What is kind of your philosophy on how to reignite that, and why is it important?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of women get caught in the trap of just taking care of other people. And then in the midst of taking care of other people, you lose yourself. Like you forget what you like, you forget what you enjoy, you forget what makes you happy, you forget what makes you come alive because you're busy doing all those things for other people.
Mm-hmm.
And um and so then all of a sudden, and you don't even real like for me, and I know this happened for me, and I talk to a lot of women, and most of them have kids, but I find even women who don't have kids, they still struggle with this.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think it's like a societal kind of norm
Mm-hmm.
for this to happen a lot. But in the caregiving, you end up not even realizing how you end up
Mm-hmm.
losing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I think, especially when you've been doing it for so long, it's hard to kind of find your way back out of it. But for me, it really did start with just working out. It started with carving out space for myself, carving out, like, just simply asking myself the question, like, what do I want to do? Because I hadn't really allowed myself to ask that question for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I want? And I think that there's benefit in that question for a lot of women. Like, what do I want to do? What do I even like anymore?
Mm-hmm.
And and so, and then going and doing that, like carving out that space. For me, I actually went back to college. Well, not back to college. I went to college for the first time. That was like step number one for me. And the second thing that I started doing was I started working out. And that started to help me just find some things out about myself that, like, I do like this, I don't like this, and just you really end up rediscovering yourself through just like finding things that help you invest in yourself, like
Mm-hmm.
into your own personal development, really.
Mm-hmm.
And then out of that, like really learning how to regulate your own emotions and then communicate, which is like part of finding your own voice. Like that right there is so empowering because like most women don't really know how to do that. But it really starts with carving out time for yourself and actually taking care of yourself. I think that's what a lot of women are afraid of, like getting older, losing their beauty, losing their body, losing all of that. I personally think what makes a woman beautiful is how well she takes care of herself. Like on the outward appearance, if we're talking about, and then inward, how she is able to show up with her energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's those two things. Like, and I think if you continually take care of yourself and you show up with good energy, you're going to remain beautiful and attractive your entire life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I want to talk real quick about like you know, coming from where you started, when you first started working at the gym, what do you remember what the minimum wage? It's a front desk job. It was minimum wage. So any of you guys don't talk trash to me because I am the one who hired her. But that was a minimum wage job.
Yeah.
Okay. What was it like?
It was 13 an hour. I remember it was
$13 an
13.
hour.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then coming from the church where you basically, I mean, you I don't know how you say that, but like you did that for housing and
Yeah.
probably a little bit of food,
Yeah.
but like you never really made money. But now I know this isn't probably like top priority for most women, but now like you're in the best shape of your life. You literally just this month you're gonna have the best month
Mm-hmm.
ever financially.
Mm-hmm.
And what else? Like you get to teach people
Mm-hmm.
and preach to people. I mean, like that's like a testimony.
Yeah.
That's 100% a testimony, and you're not riddled with a bunch of resentment
Mm-hmm.
and harboring all these negative feelings towards like your dad or your ex-husband or kids or anything like that. Like, man, that's pretty amazing. How did you get there? Because that's hope right there.
Yeah.
That's a lot of hope for a lot of people. I don't think they could see themselves making life-changing money, getting in the best shape of their life at 40 plus years old. Like,
Mm-hmm.
talk to me.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I it's everything that I do now. Like, I only started working out like 6 years ago, so that part is new. That part of like really taking care of my body and the self-care, like that part's like fairly new to my life. Before that though, like I really did invest in my own personal development. I really did invest in my relationship with
Mm-hmm.
God, like, and honestly, like, even though I didn't have like a lot of the daily habits lined up back then, like I really did um like work on myself. Like I really wanted to have a good marriage. I really wanted to have a good relationship. I had people that I sought out for mentorship. I read personal development. I'm at home homeschooling my 4 kids, and I'm reading John Maxwell books on leadership because I know that I'm not going to be just like, I know whatever I'm learning I'm going to help them with, but I also know like I'm not going to be at home forever, homeschooling. I'm going to have a life beyond that someday. So I think um you know really, like, it kind of just goes back to everything we've kind of already talked about. Like, one of the biggest things though is like learning how to control your
Mm-hmm.
emotions, because that's really the thing that stands in the way
Right.
most of the time,
Right.
is just getting out of your own way to do step number one. I was just talking to a client yesterday. I'm like, you're scared about taking this leap in your life, but do you know what step one is? Do you know like the first step? And she was like, well, yeah, I need to like do this. And I was like, okay, when you go somewhere new on your on in your car and you type it in the GPS, and Apple Maps tells you, okay, like turn right on First Street. Does it tell you all at once, like turn right on First Street, then turn left on Second Street, then turn, and it does not give you all of the directions at once. You can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
It tells you one thing at a time. It tells you turn right on First, then you take a right on First. You still have no idea where you're going. You're just following, following, following. And then you get to your next turn and it tells you take a left on 6th Street. And that's, if we would just get over the fact you don't have to have everything all figured out at once. I know most women out there know the first step that they have to take in order to change their life, but you're not doing it because you think you have to have everything figured out. Don't do that. Just take the first step.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. All right, so let's get down to the brass tacks. I want to know some real questions and some real answers. I mean,
Uh-oh.
so how much do you deadlift? How much do you squat? And how much do you bench press?
Mm,
What are your max numbers? And this is coming from a person who just started working out 6 years ago.
yeah.
But knowing your past, the rough past, you could put up some numbers. Nah, you don't have a crazy rough past, but yeah. A lot
Um,
of tears in the gym too.
oh
Like she
man.
got strong because a lot of pain and a lot of iron therapy, a lot of tears. I remember being in the gym with Coach V and her just muscling up. I mean, just this weight, but it was just more emotional trauma overcoming that.
A lot of emotional pain. I,
Yeah.
I joke sometimes with people like, I don't have muscles, I have pain. This is just pain.
Built pain.
Stored pain
Yeah.
that I turned into muscles.
Right.
Um, but that does bring a great point. It's like you do need to learn how to turn all of those things into something productive. Like, and I think that has always helped me. I've always taken the pain that I've experienced and turned it into something good, turned it into something positive. Um, but as far as numbers are concerned, I'm kind of working off old numbers right now because I haven't lifted that heavy as of recent. But my max deadlift is 320. My max squat is 315. And my max bench, I believe, is 155.
Boom.
So.
There you go. Catch up. All right, that's a wrap, guys. Coach V, Gas Money here. Where could everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram at queen three underscores VEE three underscores. You can also find me on YouTube Queen V1.
All right. And you could also find me at Instagram, Gas Money One, and YouTube.